Welcome everyone. I am so excited about these new interviews. Today our special guest is Renee McDonald. Renee is a coach, psychotherapist and counselor with over 20 years of experience working with people from all walks of life. She has expertise in a variety of areas, including leadership, mentoring, online working, personal development, relationships, grief, loss and trauma. Her second book is due out in mid-2022 and it highlights how our personal losses can frame our future success. Her first book was an academic text about working online for therapists and coaches prior to COVID-19. Her unique avant-garde approach to work and life puts her at the front of disruption, innovation, and change in the digital health technology, wellness, and mental health space. Welcome, Renee. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited, and your bio is very, very interesting and very appealing and full of experience, I would say. I am honored to have you here, and I am looking forward to hearing more about your story. This would be the first question. What is your story, and how did you start on this path?
In straight from school, I didn't do so well. I didn't get into university. I didn't follow a linear path. I didn't go into, I think at the time I went from school, there was kind of talk of me doing teaching or social work or things like that. And, a bit of full circle if you think about that. But at the end of the day, I didn't get in. I then went off and studied entertainment management. So I was actually a band manager at one point, and I worked in the film and TV and entertainment business for a while there. And I just found it wasn't my calling. What happened was, even though it was great work and I loved the work, and at one point I loved being a film researcher and all those kinds of things that I did then, it just didn't sit right with me. And yet then there was this stirring and these personal issues that were happening, and my life fell apart when a long-term relationship break down in my early 20s. And I thought that guy was the love of my life, and I was broken from that. Unfortunately, he had issues with addiction and lots of other things there. And then what came out of that was I actually sought my own therapy. And then I thought, after I did a bit of that, I thought, well, what can I do with this experience? And I actually thought to myself, and because there's a bit of therapy in my family, there's 2 generations, I tried to avoid being like my parents, but then you end up becoming like them anyway. But anyway, so I then, even at the time, I thought to myself, when I was listening to the therapist just talk about different things and help me out, I can do that job. Often people come to me, and it just felt very familiar. So I went off to study therapy, and I guess in that way, I've never looked back. But what's happened to me along the way, I guess I started out studying therapy after my original career in the kind of entertainment business. And, after that, I guess there was this stirring in me as well to do even more. Because I never wanted to see myself as just a therapist, because all the experience that I had even prior to being a therapist, I thought, how can I combine these skills? That's just the kind of person that I am. I often think about how can I combine things. So I guess then, I went out and I worked with people with disabilities. I worked then with people with refugee backgrounds. And then after that kind of work, then I became a counselling unit manager. And then I went off and I have children of my own. And then I went, right, well, didn't really think that I wanted to stay in a job that was filled with a lot of trauma. Didn't want that kind of energy around my family, but that's just obviously my choice. And I just made this decision even at the time, right, now that I'm pregnant, I'm going to go out into private practice. And I did, but it was actually harder than it appeared. So it was really a fair bit harder than I thought it was going to be. Because at the time, Australia had decided to offer mental health subsidies for psychologists. And I chose counselling and psychotherapy as my training rather than psychology, but on purpose, because I decided I wanted to work as a counsellor. I didn't want to work with serious mental illness. I wanted to work much more on grief and loss and relationships and those kind of things. And so, yes, so I guess there's kind of like so much to even that part of the story. But moving on, I then started my private practice. There was a lot of bumps, speed humps, and I just found myself going, I know I can do this. I know I can do this. There's always been that kind of attitude I've got. I was like, I know I can do this. Something's calling me for more. And so I went and I then thought to myself, well, if I'm a mum and I'm working from home, I should be able to do this online. And I started out having an online practice after a couple of clients even said to me, I'd like to do Skype, that kind of thing. This is back kind of about 11 years ago now, 11, 12 years ago. And one of my clients was from out of town and regularly wanted to, do some Skype appointments because sometimes she couldn't get to my appointments. And that's pretty much how it started. And then I just thought, it just gave me this. So what I was doing, I guess, I was following the signs. I always followed the signs. So when a client then comes in and goes, well, I'd really like to do that. And then I thought, I could do a lot more of this. Maybe this could be where I could work from home. I don't have to travel so much, and then I can do more of that. Okay, so I guess just kind of moving on from there. So I decided to offer courses almost at a time when no one was offering courses. But that's also because I taught at technical colleges here in Australia. I taught therapy skills already. So alongside me running a private practice, I was already teaching. Because I wasn't getting heaps of clients at the time, I started teaching. And so all that teaching knowledge then allowed me to develop professional development courses for therapists. And so I developed these professional development courses for therapists to transition to online work. This is 6 years ago now, well before COVID. And I've been able to tweak those courses over the last 4 or 5 years or more to what they are now. And now my courses are internationally accredited, and I have a whole sequence of steps and stairs that you can get international accreditation with me. And that's how I wrote my textbook based on my course content. There's a lot of research that went into it. And so I think on the back of that, then a lot of people have come to me for coaching, ended up doing an additional degree in coaching. Because I felt like I wanted to do it properly. So I guess you could then say I've tried to professionalize things in a lot of spaces that are not as professional as they should be. And that's almost how I find myself now.
I love that. Thank you so much, Renee. And this is really like you build your career or your path by following a lead, as you mentioned, by following that red line that we sometimes don't see. And I know that many people are wondering, how can I find my purpose in life? And they just sit on a couch and try to think, but you are actually the example that you need to start something and then you need to follow really the path where it takes you and what you like and what you are passionate about. I love that so much. And I would like to ask you, Renee, how did you manage to overcome all your losses and traumas? Because you mentioned that in your 20s, you were going through these struggles and you took that path to also help other people to do the same. How did you overcome that, or how can people overcome it?
Yeah, Well, just what I shared, that relationship breakdown, that is quite a minor thing that I've overcome compared to other things that I've overcome. So I guess it all depends on what the loss is that determines what you might need to do. And I think that's where you'd start first. If you've lost your job, it's very different to losing a parent or a partner or a sister or a child. There's a big difference between, a loss of a career or a job to people in your life. So I really think that is the starting point. Is it a loss of a relationship? Is it the loss of work, career? Or is it something that you need to transition in or out of? All these thoughts need to be kind of worked through, even within yourself, before you make the decision of, I need to see that coach, or I need to see this therapist, or what have you, because that determines almost which directional route you might need to go in. And yeah, absolutely, if you're sitting on the couch, you may not necessarily get to your purpose, although there's a flip side of that. It gives you time. And some of my clients that I've worked with, some of them might have done that, and then they work out what their life purpose is based on really mulling it over, thinking about it, reading books, doing something. So I'd strongly encourage anyone to get out there or read, or do something that might be different for your mind to get back on track. Even if you don't go to a therapist, you can pick up a book from a library or look online to see, I've got blogs, I'm sure you've got a blog, or, those kind of things. So there's a lot of information out there that people can get a hold of that might actually be able to, even if it's just something that they read that might change their mind, or sometimes the simplest thing can literally change your life path. It's like the movie Sliding Doors. So my life has been a huge sequence of sliding door moments. For each and every situation that I've experienced, it's often been do I take this route or that route? And I've often just literally followed my nose, what feels right in my gut. So I'd strongly encourage that often you know what's right for you, and that's the next step.
I love that. Thank you so much, Renee. And I know that there are so many people out there who are getting stuck. And I'm also talking from my own experience, because I was stuck in a relationship for 6 years. I was crying every single day, and I just couldn't get out of it. And I am sometimes wondering, why did I stay? Why did I stay to suffer? Why I was not well, not fulfilled? And I have so many people around me, when I see them that they are stuck, it's so obvious to me that they need to make a step to get out of that situation. And yet they don't see it, as I didn't see it, no matter what my friends were telling me. Do you have an advice for those who are in these situations? Maybe it's a career, maybe it's a path they took, maybe it's a relationship where they just feel like they are not living according to their true nature, their potential, but yet they are staying. Do you know how they can get out of it?
Yeah, the first, I guess, port of call is a little bit like what comes up in the 12-step or AA and those kind of traditions, is actually to admit you've got a problem. The problem is, if you don't admit you've got a problem, that's a problem in itself. And so most people can't see that they've got a problem in the first place. And we are actually our own worst enemies, because we're often blind to what's going on in our life. We kind of often sit in a space of denial for a long time before we'll admit to ourselves that actually this isn't okay and I need to do something about this. My life might depend on it. I mean, as a really good example, you're talking about relationships. I've worked with a lot of people who might be in coercively controlling relationships, or domestic violence relationships, or other kinds of relationships like that. They are incredibly difficult to leave, and no one should ever feel bad if they cannot leave a relationship like that. So I guess it depends on the nature of the relationship. I'd strongly encourage you to reach out to a counsellor if you're in a terrible situation like that. And in addition to that, usually counsellors are better trained than coaches in those kind of circumstances. But also, you may need to get help with accommodation or help with support workers. You may need a team of people around you. Often, if you're alone, you probably won't make the decision that's right for you, because it might be a question between you and that partner and your children, and it may not work, that decision making.
Thank you, Renee. This is for all those who are in those situations, in order to be able to get out, take that step so that you can live actually your true potential and your dream life. And I know that so many people don't even dare to dream. And when I see this is happening everywhere, we don't even imagine that there could be a better life. You lived it, you are a role model, that you overcame everything that happened to you. You had this growth mindset to push forward. How can people do that? How can they become more developed personally so they can actually grow their careers, maybe their relationships, and to attract more people who are more like them in their life? How can they do that?
Get out there and do something different. Don't just stay doing the same thing every day, in and out, every day of the week. You will never get a different outcome if you keep doing the same thing. The thing that I've actually learned the most in my life is the reason I've got such a colourful life and path, and why it hasn't been linear, is I've met so many amazing people along the way. And even just a little glimpse of that person, or a glimmer of hope that they might have given to me, whether it's a therapist I've met or a coach I've met, or joining groups of people in women's circles. I've done a lot of women's circle work. I've run retreats myself, and there's all these kinds of things that I've done that have helped me navigate that I'm not alone, but also thinking differently really expands your consciousness as well.
Thank you so much, Renee. Absolutely, I fully agree with you. The community can have a huge impact on us. I would like to ask you, before we close our interview today, who are you serving and how can people contact you?
Great questions, thank you. Who am I serving? I guess I've got about 3 or 4 different people that I serve. I am the person who helps the helpers. So I do a lot of work with therapists and coaches. I'm a coach's coach, a therapist, and I'm also a mentor's mentor. So I've got to that point, and that's why I often do leadership and those kinds of things. But now I've got to also another point in my career, and I'm very grateful for this place, where now other industries are calling on me to help them too. So I work with a lot of leaders, a lot of company and organizational leaders, and in addition to that, I work with people with relationship issues and grief and loss. So, but usually they fall into those other categories as well.
Thank you so much, Renee. And how can people contact you?
The best way to contact me is through my main website, which is reneemcdonald.com. It's just reneemcdonald.com. Or my training is on aott.com.au. So that's just for therapists and coaches in particular. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you once again. I am honored to have you here in this interview. I know that you went through a lot, and actually you are applying everything you are teaching. And this is what I'm really passionate about. When I see people walking the talk, I love that so much. Thank you once again for being with me today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
And for those of you listening to us, stay connected because there is so much more to come.